friends, and thank you for joining us on the Swamp Things podcast today. I am your host, Sam, the Sam Tater Zettel. I am here without my illustrious co-host today because we usually record on Thursdays, and today is not Thursday. And the reason I'm here today without him is because we wanted to release an episode that we recorded a little while ago, an interview with a gentleman named Robert from Grey Highlands. I had never met him before, but I got to hear his story about how he moved from the city, about his Italian heritage, about his nonna, and also about some of the people in his life that made a difference and an impact on him. And we wanted to release this episode because I think it shows the kind of content we want to have for you on here. And if you know someone like this, someone that has a great story, someone from Bruce or Grey that just has kind of a neat angle on life and stuff that we can learn from them, we want to hear their story. We'd like to have them on the show. So if you know someone like that, or if you yourself would like to come on our show, we'd love to interview you. Send us an email at the address below. And without further ado, I hope you enjoy this interview of our friend Robert from Grey Highlands. Take it away. Thanks for watching. See you later.
That's right.
That yeah. I'm cynical? I'm just really negative. I'm not cynical.
Like you don't have to defend the fact that you're not cynical if you're not cynical. That's the thing. But
let's start with the greenhouse.
So we're recording. He's gone now. Hey.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have a
headset.
I have a short attention span.
Oh, he got bored and he walked away.
Wow, it's really short. Sam just walked away. What the heck? I'm surrounded by whatever.
Youth and exuberance.
I got lots of things I can use to distract myself. Look, check this out.
Sweet.
It's a pig.
Robert, welcome to our friend Sam's office.
Fantastic. Thank you for having me on. Sam, I'm also a guitar player.
Oh, okay.
As a COVID present to myself, I finally bought a new acoustic guitar. It's a Gibson G45. It's a slope-shouldered model. Walnut back and sides, hide glue, dovetail neck joint, spruce top. Yeah, Zennials like to talk about componentry, and we like craft things.
Yeah. Hide glue, yeah. I feel like very few people would actually know what that is or have heard it before. But
hide glue? I've never heard of hide glue.
Hide glue.
Hide glue.
Yeah.
Glue made from hide.
Yeah.
Is better than...
It's just actually a natural glue, right? It's like they were using it long ago. So it's not like a modern synthetic glue. It's like I don't even know what it's made from.
It's made from animal hide.
Oh, is that what it's called? Hide glue. Makes sense.
That's right. And because it's a natural glue, it has better resonant qualities with the rest of the wood, the natural materials in the guitar.
Yeah.
Including the nitrocellulose lacquer finish.
Oh.
Ooh.
Years ago,
not satin, not gloss.
I've got a glue story. Years ago, I worked with a lady who this was the 80s. So she was probably in her 60s or around 70 when I worked with her. Can't remember the poor lady's name now. But she had worked at an envelope factory prior to the office where I worked with her. And she said, never lick the back of an envelope. Because probably hide glue.
I learned that on Seinfeld.
I heard that from a lady who worked in an envelope factory.
Wow, right on.
Anyway, hey Robert, glad to have you on board with Swamp Things. Sam gave me the idea that I should sort of host the conversation until the very end, when there'll be some skill testing questions for you later on. But first, the fun part. First of all, what happened to your greenhouse? Because a lot of us experienced this incredible wind last night.
Yeah, so my greenhouse was blown through by the prevailing Singhampton winds.
Yeah.
And I had erected a greenhouse around our raised garden beds. My wife Maria is an enthusiast of square foot gardening. So we tried this method where we built beds about yay tall out of hemlock and fill them with vermiculite, peat moss, compost, and then very delicate little seedlings, which need to be sheltered from the wind. So I had a hoop house, which is made out of 1.25 inch electrical PVC conduit bent in hoops over, and then I had plastic over that, and I built framed end walls on it with pressure treated 2x4s, and unfortunately I didn't finish putting it together.
Right.
So I threw the greenhouse plastic over and had it weighted down on both sides, and the wind caused such a flappa that the thing just buggered right off. So that was a lot of fun. That's how I spent last night and after work today.
So is the plastic back on the greenhouse?
Oh no, that's going to be after this podcast.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well, thanks for taking the time. Hey, tell us about your house. I was telling Sam about it, so we found the pictures. Tell us about what your house is all about.
Cool, yeah. So my house is built out of a Quonset shell. And Quonset comes from the town in New England where these semicircle type buildings made out of, at that time, metal frames and then corrugated metal were made first to house soldiers post-World War I. So that's what you call a Quonset. So Quonset just means a metal hut, basically. Ours is made of 14 gauge corrugated galvalume coated Canadian recycled steel. And 14 gauge means it's about 1/8 of an inch thick, and it's 20 feet high in the center.
Wow.
There it is. Yeah, and I built this myself with the help of some very skilled trades. So the building itself is the Quonset shell, and then it sits on a concrete slab, which is our floor finish. There's heating pipes in that slab, which are heated by a small electric boiler. On the south elevation of the house was pointed by satellite survey directly north-south to maximize solar gains. On the south end, we have 28 feet wide by 12-foot high windows, and the gable ends are recessed. So on the south end, the sun, when it's at its highest in the summer, at noon doesn't penetrate the building envelope. But when it's low in the winter, it does. And that means that we get heating from the sun that heats up our slab.
Yep.
The other thing is that our arch, which is an exact semicircle, resolves to vertical on both sides. And it has 6-foot deep foundation walls, which serve as frost walls.
Right.
All around, those are insulated. And then the void that's created by that, the house is 60 feet long and 40 feet wide. The void that's created in that foundation almost looks like a big concrete swimming pool.
Right.
It's filled with compacted screenings and then insulated. So what that means is when the sun and the boiler heat the floor, it has mass, and that also pushes the heat into this heat battery, which radiates heat continually.
Right.
Yeah. And eventually it'll condition the earth beneath it to have a bulb of conditioned earth.
Wow.
And then the shell, on the outside of the shell, has 6 inches of spray foam insulation on it, and then is covered with another metal skin. So the exterior of the house has no eaves troughs. We have drainable fill alongside the house, which is awesome because we get some of the highest snow loads in Canada.
Right.
I think Dundalk has more snow than us.
Probably.
But, it's a lot.
Yeah.
The house has a blast rating. I'm not sure what that, how much it is specifically, but it can actually withstand bomb blasts.
Right. That's good.
It has a projected lifespan of hundreds of years, so we're not the last people that can live in it. It's wheelchair accessible. Everything's on one level. We have a wood-framed loft that we have our sleeping quarters and ensuite and stuff there. But the rest of it's all one level, and we have a wheelchair accessible bathroom as well, barrier free. And what else? We designed the house, actually, we designed it with our architect, Andy Thompson, a very talented and very committed architect. Really obsessive about the details, and he's a Buckminster Fuller enthusiast. The guy's done some really rad work. This guy learned German so he could go to get his Master's of Architecture in Germany, and worked building eco-textural houses in the meantime. And before that, he was a professional snowboarder.
Wow.
And he has a Quonset 1.0 on the Quebec side of the Ottawa River near Pembroke.
Okay.
And so this is a 2.0. His is 16 feet high. Ours is 20 feet high. And yeah, it's been a wonderful experience building this house. I've never built a house before. We moved into a 14-foot trailer while we were doing so. Myself, my wife, and our 2 German Shepherds and our Golden Retriever. And we learned a lot about dwellings when we were doing that. So it's been a journey.
So what stage of finish is the house at now, Robert?
So we're at about 90+%. Okay. Definitely not 100%. Now all I have to do is apply the cladding on the gable ends of the structure and some light finishing inside, clear coat on trim, that kind of stuff.
Is it like a pine finish? The pine boards on the inside?
Yes, everything is number 2 rough sawn pine. The ethos behind this house was a motorcycle and also a pizza margarita. Yeah, enough, but not too much. Beautiful ingredients, realized thoughtfully.
Okay. So, for some people, pizza margarita might be a margarita which has pizza ingredients in it. So what's a pizza margarita, in case people don't know? Many people do.
Pause for applause. So pizza margarita is named after Queen Margarita.
I didn't know that.
Yes, who was Queen of Italy in the 1870s. And Italy, after its unification, came together under a new flag, which was green, white, and red. So they had a great fair, and in honor of the new flag and the Queen, they came up with the pizza margarita, which itself is a crust made of semolina flour. It uses traditionally San Marzano tomatoes from the Vesuvian slopes near Napoli. That's the red. So the white is the crust. You get the red in the sauce. Then you get the cheese, which is the mozzarella. That's again more white, and then the green of the basil, and that's a pizza margarita. And it is, as you can tell by my hand motions and my enthusiasm, I am of Italian heritage, and my family in the old country bakes authentic pizza. My cousin Franco is the pizzaiolo, and he cuts down the trees and splits the firewood to feed the fire in the pizza oven that he built to make the pizza, and he also mills the grain.
Right.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Hey,
so
Robert.
and then I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt. Just that was just like I get the idea of something really simple, but the simpler you do something, the better you have to do it because you're completely exposed. There's no room for fluff. When you do something that's so simple, it's got to be great. Every piece has to be great, right? Does that make sense?
Yes, that's exactly it. In fact, the reason why I enjoy that Gibson guitar is because that guitar it's enough and it's not too much.
There you go.
It's that. My father would ask me when I was growing up, do you want to be the best of the worst, or do you want to be the worst of the best? And I would think about that, and I would think, at first I thought, like, perhaps he's just messing with me, which he was. But also, I would rather be the worst of the best, because I believe that it gives you something to, what should I say? You make the most of what you've got, and you have a lot to look forward to.
I like it.
Yeah.
A phrase Sam used here years ago, just regarding the church and stuff, is we have to raise the bar. If we don't raise the bar, we get minimalism, and minimalism is a death spiral. Does that make sense?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's not minimalistic for the sake of being minimalistic.
Right.
The house, when I use those ingredients of the pizza margarita and the motorcycle, I'll explain the motorcycle. I love bikes, and my wife rides as well. And when you're on a bike, maybe it's very pretty, but that doesn't matter when you're on it. So by carrying things that are strictly, yeah, right on. That's a Suzuki GSXR 1100. Yeah. So that bike
Did you
right
say
there.
1100?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Did you say 1100?
Yeah.
1100, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
As opposed to 1100.
Oh, I mean, that sounds like a lot.
Well, it's plenty in that bike.
Yeah.
If
Not
it's
very
ornamental for the sake of being ornamental,
Right.
it's like being overly showy unnecessarily.
Sure.
Like, why would you wear the fanciest boots you can as opposed to the most effective boots you can? That kind of thing.
I was saying then the next thing I'd like to ask you about, Robert, is a phrase I heard you use a couple of years, maybe just last year, is your shiny life in the city. What is your shiny life? What was your shiny life in the city, and why did you leave it? So now you're in this Quonset hut on the Niagara Escarpment, just overlooking the slope down to Collingwood. What was the shiny life in the city?
Things get weird. Things get weird real fast, I guess. So, yeah, I'm from the inner city in Toronto, and grew up there all my life. Later on, we moved to Etobicoke. I went to school at St. Mike's at St. Clair and Bathurst, and went to university at U of T. So spent a lot of time downtown. Then I became a industrial designer, and I worked for the family business, designing and building bathroom fans and other building products for the ventilation industry. So I got to see the ins and the outs of downtown life, of owning a house in Toronto, of the construction industry in Toronto, of the nightlife and the weekend life. We love places like Kensington Market and the different neighborhoods of the GTA. But on the weekends, all we wanted to do was take a trip out to the country, or get a pod in the woods. We were searching for peace. I drink like 2 cups of French roast a day now, but back then I was on 7 to 9 espressos. And it was my wife and I were at yeah, and I don't need it. I think that coffee wakes up in the morning and drinks raw.
Right.
Yeah. So my wife and I, she's a nurse and she was working in dental anesthesiology. We were both at a frenetic pace for so long, and we saw so many people around us. I don't know. The lifestyle had a detrimental effect. And by looking at the big picture of what is it that life is, what do we want out of life, the most sensical thing to do was search Eastern Canada for 5 years, then move into a trailer, then build a house out of a big beer can.
I know something you and I have in common. I've been up in Grey County since 1998, but a common experience that we've had is how amazing it is to listen to older people. We were talking about the other day when you and I were speaking in their 80s and 90s that you've been talking with about just listening to their stories. And you have a project, I believe, called Recall that formalizes that in a way. But first of all, why is it really important to you as somebody who's like 5 years in? Is that correct?
To this job?
Into Grey County. I don't know how long.
It will be 3 years this Canada Day.
3 years this Canada Day. So you're pretty new into the area in a way. But you really, I gather, find it amazing to listen to old farmers about whatever stories they want to tell. Why is that really important for you?
I was lucky enough to be raised by my grandparents. They came from southern Italy, and my Nonna Maria taught me how to bake bread, and my Nonno Bruno taught me how to pull nails out of 2x4s. And by being surrounded by people that were older than me, I got to hear, I got to be steeped in that culture. I got to understand their paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess because of that, I was always able to have conversations with people that were older than me. And I like people that are my age, and of course younger as well, that's fine. But when you're someone who's 80 or 90, they've seen a lot of stuff and they know a lot of stuff. If you listen, it's like kind of time machine, because you're listening to someone who is a prime from the past,
Yeah.
and you're listening to someone who is at a stage in life that you are not yet at.
Mm-hmm.
So they know two things that you don't know. They know what it's like to be 80 and 90, having seen all this stuff, and they know what it was like back in the day.
Right.
So at the museum, when I started there, I started as a volunteer in the fall of 2017, and I was the youngest person on the board by at least 40 years.
Right.
And it was amazing. It was amazing. We have the funnest board. It's a bunch of very interesting people that have led different lives and are different people. But they're at that age and they're in the certain place where it's very authentic. By the time you're that age, you're yourself.
Sure.
You know? So what it is that people have done and what it is that they've seen and their perspective on things is really cool. And right now I'm an in-betweener. I am we do a lot of work with young people at the museum.
Yeah, I was going to say, let me just interrupt for a quick second, because this definitely ties into what Sam's been doing up here for years, from the time he was a teenager, actually. But it's really about a lot of what he does is mentoring youth, and I know that's another passion of yours. Like, you've got both ends of the spectrum. Why is it important for you to mentor young people?
You know, when I was 19. I was in my second year at U of T. I was working at Home Depot on opening shifts and closing shifts. And then my dad, and I was on my way, hopefully, to be a lawyer. And then my dad came home with cancer, and I had to step into an area of the family business and then learn how to run it.
Yeah.
And I had to learn all these lessons under extreme pressure in many different vectors, with no option for failure, and I didn't have anyone to tell me stuff.
Right.
You know, and at the time I had so because my dad is Italian and I'm Italian, there's conflict when you agree, let alone when you disagree.
Yeah.
So you can't just ask the stuff that you want to ask at certain times.
Yeah.
And I didn't know a lot of things. And I was very, very lucky to be under the tutelage of one of my 5 uncles, Tony. That this particular Uncle Tony was a chain-smoking 60-something-year-old who yelled at me until I learned how to design sheet metal and practice good warehouse inventory practices. So I had a mentor there. I really looked up to him, and he didn't treat me with any sympathy or empathy. It was there was love there, definitely, but he wanted to pass what it is that he knew by example.
And by yelling, probably.
I'm sorry?
And by yelling?
Of course, by yelling.
There you go.
But also by eating mortadella sandwiches and drinking espressos.
Yeah, it's good.
It's that. So then I had I built a great relationship with 2 other wonderful men. One was Bill. He was from Hong Kong, and he was a sheet metal manufacturer. I bought sheet metal components from him, and then we talked about sheet metal, and then we talked about life. Mostly about sheet metal, but I learned stuff from him. I learned how to handle difficulty. When stuff is extremely hard and it's not fair, don't freak out. Just order your sheet metal and then form it into products and then ship it out properly and then collect your money. And if they don't pay, it's okay. Just keep going. that kind of thing. And then I made an amazing friend named Sarmad. Sarmad was born in Pakistan and studied the stratosphere and got his PhD through the Soviet Union and then in Chicago. And he was another sheet metal manufacturer. And he taught me, we talked a lot about, sheet metal and design as well, but also business and also life. So my life was so impacted by this kind of mentorship that when presented with the opportunity, it's not like I aggressively mentor.
Yeah.
Like, hey kid, let me tell you how it works. But I understand the ambiguities and the unanswered questions that I had in life, and the positive difference that having somebody that I looked up to,
Sure,
and someone that who had it together, or at least there was a really positive difference there.
Hey, Robert,
that's turned into, yeah.
I'm going to interrupt. That was great. We have to talk to you again sometime about more stuff. This is a great start.
I got so many questions.
I know. Well, go ahead, ask them.
Geez, I don't even know where to start.
Okay.
It's mentorship, like that was great. I love what you said about how talking to someone older is like a time machine. It's like you can see into history, in a way that's so much different than just reading about it or watching it on TV. Like, I've still got 2 living grandmothers, and one of them's 96, and she's just, I wish I could like bottle up her essence,
Oh yeah, she's pretty
like,
amazing.
Yeah.
Like kind of
So
suck it out whenever I want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing that I really I wanted to kind of hone in on was, you said, you had you feel like older people, one of the beautiful things about them is that they know themselves. They are totally comfortable with being them, almost to a fault. I find that at least my relatives, they're willing to say things that the rest of us are thinking, but no, we shouldn't say.
No filters, as they say.
No filter,
Yep.
And that's because they're so confident in who they are and just so at peace with themselves that they can they don't care what other people think, and that's so refreshing. But and I thought that tied in beautifully with youth, with teens, because teenage life, it's like at some point in your early teens, your identity is kind of robbed from you. You start out being a child of your parents. That's your identity. It's all wrapped up in them. And then at some point, it's kind of varies from person to person. You just it's the rug's pulled out from under you, and you spend the next like 5-10 years, maybe more than that, it's kind of a trajectory, figuring out who you are, like,
and well, I'll throw in this. I think Robert, you'd agree. Probably you would too, Sam. We've gotten to a weird stage where that is indulged. It needs to happen. Yeah. You're a child, then you're an adult. That has to happen. But we've like given way too much time for that, and left people, like, I think, judging from my daughter May, who's 20 now, worked with Robert for a couple of summers. Her contemporaries at university is like their childhood. Too many of them they're still children. They're like, parents are like doing their laundry for them.
Yeah.
And they're like 18, 19-year-old young men and women, and it's not healthy. It's not good. We've indulged that way too much. I know you agree with that, Robert, because I've heard you say stuff like that before.
You have the Southern Italian grandmother, my Nonna Maria, okay, will hit you and feed you.
Right.
You will never disagree in either instance.
Sure.
It's, you should smarten up, and that you should smarten up, and like, do you want to be a child forever? Like, don't you want to be able to deal with things?
Yeah.
The idea of being a man, or the idea of being a gentleman, means that you can handle things. Growing into adulthood is something that I feel one should do, particularly young men. And young men love responsibility. And eventually, when you're lying to someone long enough because you don't want to hurt their very delicate feelings, they're going to get used to that level.
Sure.
And then anything that happens that is uncomfortable, they'll break down and wuss out about it.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? The strength is totally within you to handle things if only you would allow yourself to handle things and quit retreating into your prolonged, indulgent childhood fantasies. You know, if you want it, go and get it.
Robert, I gotta ask you one more question and make a comment, if that's okay. So the question is, you mentioned your dad got very sick. I believe he died not, like, how long was he sick? And he died when you were still quite young, right? Within a relatively short time. Is that right? I'm not sure I remember correctly.
So my father had cancer on and off for few years,
right.
And total length of from when he was first diagnosed to when he passed away was just over 10 years.
Okay.
And the cancer didn't get him. He liked to win things, so that was good.
Yeah.
But when he did pass away, it was it was not expected, and it was very quick. But he did have a physical written bucket list, and he did cross all of the items on that bucket list, which include seeing me get married, having a grandson, who's my nephew Davide, playing golf at St. Andrews like a champion, which he did, going, and then the last one, which was not crossed off, was going back to the old country as a family.
Wow.
Which we did with my mom, my sister, our spouses this past Christmas. So yeah. Anyway, so when he did pass away, it was pretty sudden. But that was in October of 2016. He was 62, the same age as his father.
Right.
So the way I looked at it, I was 31 when we started this crazy journey. And I figured, you know what? If my life is half over, genetically speaking, then I better get busy living.
Yeah.
I've got so many questions about your building project. I guess I'll probably just more comment about it. Maybe we can talk about this another time. But have you heard of earth ships?
Yes, very much. Yeah. This earth ships are awesome.
Yeah. So
you carry it and make it an earth ship.
So my family built one in 2010, and following the explicit instructions from Michael, what's his last name?
The guy who came up with the
show notes. The guy who came up with it, Michael Reynolds, invented it, and we designed, using his books and built it ourselves out of tires. And so what you're saying about south facing, glazing, thermal mass in the floor, so the floor heats up. It's like a thermal battery, passive airflow. So you don't need fans to cool everything or heat everything. It's like everything's passive. Everything moves around on its own naturally, and all that really speaks to me. We should have a long conversation about that sometime.
Yeah.
I'd love to pick your brains more about it, and it's still doing really well today. I joked with Spicy C here.
Oh, sorry, my podcast nickname is Spicy C.
Spicy C is his nickname, but. I joked with him when he told me you were building a 200-year house. I said, 200 years, because the buried tires in the Earthship, we figure will be there for at least 500 years. I think that's their half-life. So they're going to be there. Like archaeologists will dig it up and we'll go like, "What the heck was this?" So it's just kind of making fun of you, even though I didn't know you. But anyway, I'd like to pick your brains about that a little more later and find out more about Project Recall and I also have a motorcycle license. Unfortunately, I had to sell my motorcycle after I had my 5th child.
Sam has a clone army.
I have a clone
5
army.
boys.
So it just got ridiculous. I couldn't take more than one kid on the motorcycle, so it wasn't practical anymore. So, love the GSXR. Love motors. I had an old '84 CBR.
Nice.
Not a CBR, a CB, but it was the predecessor to the CBR. Yeah. It was a beautiful bike, and I loved it. And so.
You guys have a lot more in common.
Motorcycles nowadays, as opposed to being necessary for locomotion, are often perceived as virility symbols, which you don't need.
Nope. I don't need anybody to. I don't need to prove that in any other way.
People just look at your head.
People look at my head, yeah, and they know
Yeah, there you go.
it's
I don't
gone
know.
for a reason.
Um, hey, one other thing I want to just observe. You got 5 uncles named Tony. Is that right?
Yes. Now those are either uncles by direct
Yeah.
relation or uncles as titles of respect.
So I've got 2 younger brothers. We all have the middle name Anthony, and we have a total of 6 sons divided amongst the 3 families. So no, 5 sons, and they all have the middle names that are variants. Because this Saturday coming up, I don't know if you know or pay attention.
Tony,
St. Anthony of Padua is this Saturday coming
right.
up, June 13th. It's my parents' wedding anniversary, so it's like always a huge day for the Tonys and for our family. Anyway, so to all the Tonys out there, St. Anthony this Saturday, and
Your
Your feast day.
there you go.
Yeah, not your feast day,
What's-
but a bunch of uncles.
What's your full name, Robert?
My full name is Robert Edward Iantorno.
Thank you. Awesome.
Yeah,
can we-
Robert. My parents named me Robert Edward. Edward after my grandfather Eduardo, but they anglicized my first and middle names because they didn't want me to face the same discrimination that they and my grandparents had faced for having ethnic names. Ironically, they left Iantorno, which was kind of a giveaway.
Sure. A little bit. Especially in Grey County.
Yeah,
Even more in Bruce.
Yeah.
Things are even
Yeah.
weirder in Bruce.
things are weirder in Bruce. Yeah,
Yeah.
Things are weirder. That's a good slogan, by the way. Things are weirder in
that
Bruce.
could be our slogan.
Yes.
And I feel like this podcast brings them together because we have this rivalry going on. Bruce and Gray.
Hey,
For it to be a rivalry, there would have to be some sort of. It would have to be like some sort of even competition.
ooh.
Oh, so what you're saying is like Gray's got a long way to go before they're even close to being
So
competition.
we all 3 have a mutual friend, acquaintance, Brian Plumstead, who's the director of tourism for Grey County. I think that's the right title. I'm not sure. Tourism manager, whatever. So in honor of our mutual friend Brian and the fact that you have kind of tourism-like responsibilities for Grey Highlands, the municipality that is where the museum is in Flesherton. And Grey Highlands is like the Beaver Valley, Markdale, Flesherton, all the way over to Highway 6. Is that right?
It's all the way over.
Maybe not as far as Highway 6.
Yeah.
Anyway,
West Gray starts in there somewhere.
we've got some tourism related trivia for you to answer. Robert, some questions for you. Is that okay?
What?
Sounds
We're going to
good.
do the stupid salmon trivia?
Okay. No, do you want to do salmon trivia?
Let's try.
All right. Because the Great Salmon Derby is a really big deal, as you know, for Grey County, correct?
I think it was canceled, wasn't it?
It was canceled for this year, but isn't that one of our biggest events in Grey County? Yes?
I am not aware of a salmon derby.
You've never heard of the Salmon Derby?
I haven't.
Wow. That's sad.
Well, you're not going to do very well at the trivia, I don't think.
Okay, Sam's got some salmon trivia for you. Good luck.
Where does the salmon derby take place?
Owen Sound.
It's just Owen Sound Salmon Spectacular.
There you go.
Rad.
Go ahead, Sam.
I don't know why we're doing this.
We're not. It's no good reason. This is just a waste of time. Go.
Okay. I'm being forced to do this, so you know,
Yes,
Robert.
I'm forcing him to do it.
It's not my idea.
Okay.
Which breed of salmon do you think is caught at the Salmon Spectacular? There are many breeds,
Species.
species.
Just guess.
Jeez. Speckled salmon?
No. Speckle's a kind of trout, as far as I know.
Persephone says no, it's Chinook salmon.
I was going to say Chinook, but I didn't. I own that.
Sure you
Next.
did, Robert. Okay, the next one. From which ocean did the salmon that are now caught in the Great Salmon Spectacular come from? From which ocean did they come from?
Yeah, you have a 1 in 7 chance of getting this one. Probably. Unless you don't know what the world's oceans are called.
I'm going to say Pacific.
You are correct.
Stick by it.
Correct! Way to go!
All right. One more question. Go ahead, Sam.
Okay.
I don't know. We don't know enough to ask you these questions.
Yeah.
Sam does fish a little bit. I don't fish. Do you fish at all, Robert?
I don't. My wife fishes.
Oh, okay.
I like eating and cooking fish.
Yeah, same
There
here.
you go. How about we leave it there? That was the last question. Hey, Robert, thanks so much for coming on. You will appear in a future episode of Swamp Things. Thank you.